The full moon hung like a pearl of judgment in the obsidian sky, casting silver light upon the jagged edges of Spirit Valley. At its deepest point, where ancient stones jutted from the earth like broken teeth, a figure lay motionless. Red fabric pooled around her like spilled wine, a stark contrast against the pale earth. White hair spread in ethereal waves, catching moonlight as though the stars themselves had woven through each strand. She did not move. She did not breathe. Or perhaps she breathed so shallowly that even the wind forgot she was alive. Above, on the valley's rim, the villagers had already turned their backs. Their torches flickered in retreat, orange dots swallowed by the forest. They had done what tradition demanded. They had thrown the Omega into the valley, an offering to appease whatever dark hunger haunted their failing crops. They believed the land demanded sacrifice. They believed her death would bring salvation. They were wrong. Through the dense woods on the opposite ridge, something moved with the silence of shadow and the purpose of vengeance. Corbin Wolfsong, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, had been tracking the scent for miles. Blood. Fear. And beneath it all, something that made his wolf stir with recognition. A fragrance like sun-warmed honey and wild jasmine that should not exist in this forsaken place. He emerged from the tree line, his massive frame silhouetted against the moon. Black hair fell past his shoulders, partially tied back, strands escaping to frame a face carved from granite and fury. His beard was well kept, but could not soften the sharp angles of his jaw or the predatory intensity of his amber eyes. Eyes that now fixed on the crimson figure far below. Without hesitation, he descended. The Alpha King moved like liquid darkness down the treacherous slope, boots finding purchase where there seemed to be none, hands gripping stone that would crumble under lesser strength. His wolf pushed at his consciousness, demanding speed, demanding action, howling with an urgency that transcended reason. When he reached her, he dropped to his knees with such force that the ground trembled. She lay utterly still, her face turned toward the earth as though in prayer or defeat. The red dress had been torn, whether by the fall or by cruel hands before it, he could not tell. Scratches marred her pale arms. Blood had dried at her temple. Corbin reached out, his large calloused hands hovering just above her, suddenly uncertain. He, who had commanded armies, who had torn through enemies without mercy, felt something in his chest constrict with unfamiliar fear. Gently, with a tenderness that would have shocked his warriors, he turned her onto her back. The moonlight illuminated her face, and the world stopped. She was ethereal, otherworldly. Her white hair framed features so delicate they seemed sculpted by artists who understood beauty as a form of cruelty. High cheekbones, full lips slightly parted, skin like porcelain that had never known harsh sunlight. But it was not her beauty that struck him motionless. It was the pull. The absolute, undeniable recognition that blazed through every cell in his body. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are. I hope you enjoy the story. His wolf surged forward, pressing against his control, and for the first time in decades, Corbin Wolfsong struggled to maintain his human form. The word thundered through his mind, ancient and absolute. Mate. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat, to the delicate column where her pulse should flutter. For one eternal second, there was nothing. Then, faint as a butterfly's wing, he felt it. Life. Fragile, but persistent. Relief crashed through him with such force that his hands shook. She is alive. She is mine. And someone will answer for this. He gathered her into his arms as though she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. Her head fell against his shoulder, white hair spilling over his arm. The scent of her, even beneath the dirt and blood, made his wolf rumble with possessive satisfaction. Corbin stood, his jaw set with lethal determination. The villagers had made a grave error. They had not just thrown away an innocent woman. They had laid hands on his mate. And when he discovered who was responsible, he would teach them that some offerings were never meant to be given. He began the climb back up the valley wall, moving with inhuman grace despite his burden. She stirred once against him, a small sound escaping her lips, and he found himself murmuring words he had not spoken in years. "Do not fear, little one. You are safe now. I have you. I will always have you." The moon watched their ascent, silent witness to the moment when fate intervened, when an Alpha King found what he did not know he was searching for, when a discarded Omega became the most precious thing in his world. Behind them, Spirit Valley stood empty, its stones still warm from where she had fallen. The earth had not accepted the sacrifice. The land had other plans, and in the forest beyond, wolves began to howl, their voices carrying a message that would soon reach every territory. The Alpha King had found his mate, and heaven help anyone who stood in his way. Hours later, in the private chambers of Corbin's traveling camp, Yara Sunvale woke to the sensation of warmth, not the cold stone of the valley floor, not the rough hemp of the bonds they had used to tie her wrists. Warmth, softness, the gentle crackle of fire and the scent of pine and leather, and something else. Something that made her wolf, small and suppressed as it had always been, stir with interest. The warmth was everywhere. Beneath her, the softest bedding she had ever touched cradled her battered body. Above her, furs piled thick and luxurious, their weight comforting rather than stifling. The air itself seemed warmer here, heated by the fire she could hear crackling somewhere nearby. After the brutal cold of the valley floor, after the wind that had cut through her torn dress like knives, this warmth felt like a benediction. She opened her eyes slowly, her vision swimming before it focused on an unfamiliar ceiling. Rich fabric draped above her, deep burgundy and gold, the kind of luxury she had only glimpsed in the village elder's home during her brief, unwanted visits. The fabric swayed gently, moved by air currents she could not feel, creating dancing shadows that should have been ominous, but somehow felt protective. Beyond the bed's canopy, she could make out the peaked ceiling of a large tent. Oil lamps hung from the support poles, their flames steady and bright, casting golden light that pushed back every shadow. The tent walls were thick canvas, reinforced and weather-worn, speaking of countless journeys and temporary homes. This was not the dwelling of someone who stayed in one place. This was the tent of a traveler, a warrior, someone accustomed to making camp in wild places. Panic seized her throat. Where am I? She tried to sit up, and pain lanced through her body. Her ribs screamed. Her head throbbed. Her ankle, twisted in the fall, protested any movement. A hand appeared in her line of vision, palm up, fingers spread in a gesture of peace. "Do not move. You are injured." The voice was deep, resonant, with the kind of authority that expected obedience without question. But there was something else beneath it. Gentleness. Concern. Yara turned her head, and her breath caught. The man sitting beside her bed was enormous. His presence seemed to fill the entire tent, commanding space and air and attention without effort. Black hair fell around his shoulders, slightly damp as though recently washed. His beard was neat, emphasizing rather than hiding the strong line of his jaw. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Amber, burning like molten gold in the firelight. Eyes that looked at her with an intensity that should have terrified her. Instead, something in her chest loosened. Recognized. Reached toward him like a flower toward the sun. "Who are you?" Her voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. His expression softened infinitesimally, a slight easing around his eyes that transformed his face from terrifying to simply powerful. "My name is Corbin Wolfsong. I am Alpha King of the Northern Territories." He paused, his gaze searching her face as though memorizing every detail. "And you are safe. That is all you need to know right now. Safe." The word was foreign. When had she ever been safe? Even in her mother's arms as a child, there had been the knowledge that safety was temporary, that the world beyond their small home was hostile and unforgiving. After her mother's death, safety had become a fantasy she stopped believing in altogether. But the way he said it, with such absolute conviction, made something in her chest flutter with desperate hope. She studied him more carefully now, trying to understand who this man was and why he had brought her here. His clothing, now that she could see it properly in the lamplight, was fine but practical. Dark leather and wool, well made but worn from use. A silver wolf's head clasp held his cloak at his shoulder, the craftsmanship exquisite. Everything about him spoke of wealth and power, but also of someone who did not simply command from a throne. This was a man who rode with his warriors, who knew the feeling of weather and road. And he had called himself an Alpha King. Not just an alpha, but a king. The ruler of an entire territory, possibly multiple packs. Someone whose word was law across vast stretches of land. Why would such a man care about a discarded Omega from a forgotten village? Memories rushed back. The village council. The elder's pronouncement. The rough hands dragging her through the streets while people she had known her entire life looked away. The edge of Spirit Valley yawning before her like an open mouth. The fall. The terror. The certainty that she was going to die. They threw me away. The words emerged broken, sharp with betrayal. Corbin's expression darkened, shadows crossing his face like storm clouds. His hands, which had been resting casually on his knees, curled into fists. I know. His voice had dropped lower, carrying a dangerous edge that raised the hair on her arms. Tell me who they are. Yara stared at him, confusion mingling with the persistent ache in her body. Why do you care? I am no one. An Omega without family, without worth. The village decided I was expendable. She laughed, but it came out bitter and hollow. They said the land needed blood to restore the harvest. They chose me because no one would miss me. Something in Corbin's face shifted. His eyes flared brighter, and for a moment, Yara thought she saw them flash with inhuman light. You are not no one. His words were fierce. Each syllable weighted with conviction, and they did not choose correctly. He leaned forward, and despite his size, despite the power radiating from him like heat from a forge, his hand was gentle when it touched her cheek. His palm was warm, calloused from weapons and work, but the way he cupped her face was reverent. You are Yara Sunvale, an Omega, yes, but that makes you precious, not worthless. And you are mine. The declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning she did not fully understand. Yours. She whispered the word, her heart hammering against her ribs. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she had not realized had fallen. Mine. My mate. The one my soul has been searching for across years and territories and countless empty nights. He held her gaze, letting her see the truth blazing in his eyes. I knew it the moment I caught your scent. My wolf knew before my mind did. You are the other half of everything I am. Yara felt the world tilt beneath her. Mate bonds were rare, sacred things spoken of in whispers and old stories. They were supposed to be blessings, gifts from the moon goddess herself. But she had stopped believing in blessings long ago. That is impossible. Her voice shook. You are an Alpha King. I am nothing. A cast-off. A sacrifice that failed. Corbin's other hand came up to frame her face, holding her as though she were made of spun glass and starlight. You are everything. And anyone who made you believe otherwise will learn the consequences of their ignorance. There was such conviction in his voice, such absolute certainty, that something inside Yara, some small part that had survived years of neglect and cruelty, began to crack open. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and unbidden, and she did not have the strength to stop them. They came in a flood, breaking through the dam she had built over years of forcing herself not to feel, not to hope, not to want. Every moment of loneliness, every casual cruelty, every night she had cried herself to sleep believing she was fundamentally unworthy of love. It all came pouring out in great, shuddering sobs. Corbin made a sound low in his chest, pained and protective. He drew her forward carefully, mindful of her injuries, and wrapped his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked beneath his chin, his heartbeat steady and strong against her ear. One of his large hands cradled the back of her head, fingers threading gently through her white hair, while his other arm banded around her waist, holding her together when she felt like she might shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The way he held her was a revelation. She had been touched before, grabbed, restrained, shoved, all of it rough and perfunctory, and meant to control. But this was different. His arms were strong enough to crush stone, she had no doubt. But they held her with a gentleness that spoke of infinite care. As though she were something precious. As though breaking her would break him in turn. Weep if you need to, little mate. I will hold you through it. I will hold you through everything. His voice rumbled through his chest into hers, the vibration soothing in a way she could not explain. She felt his lips press against the top of her head, a tender gesture that made her cry harder. When was the last time someone had kissed her forehead? Her mother, perhaps, 2 decades ago. A lifetime of loneliness compressed into the years between then and now. And Yara, who had not been held with kindness since her mother died when she was 8 years old, who had learned to make herself small and invisible to avoid attention, who had endured loneliness like a constant companion, finally broke. She wept into his chest while the Alpha King held her, one hand stroking her white hair, murmuring words in the old language that she did not understand but felt in her bones. Words of protection, of promise, of permanence. The ancient tongue of their kind, words that predated human speech, words that spoke directly to the soul. She could not translate them, but her wolf understood, crooning softly in response, accepting the vows being spoken over her. When her tears finally subsided into hiccuping breaths, Corbin eased her back gently, keeping one arm around her for support. You need to eat, to heal. He glanced toward the tent entrance. My healer has left medicine for the pain. You will take it. It was not a question, but there was no harshness in his tone, only concern. Yara nodded, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. As if summoned by his words, a woman entered the tent carrying a tray. She was older, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Ah, you are awake, young one. Good, good. The woman set the tray on a small table and began preparing something in a cup. I am Mira, the king's healer. You gave us quite a scare. Corbin had not moved from his position beside the bed, his presence a solid wall of protection at Yara's back. Mira met his eyes briefly, some unspoken communication passing between them, before she smiled at Yara. Drink this. It will help with the pain, and help you sleep. The healer held out the cup. You are safe here, child. The Alpha King has made that abundantly clear to everyone in camp. Yara took the cup with trembling hands, glancing at Corbin uncertainly. He nodded once, and she drank. The liquid was bitter but warm, spreading heat through her chest and limbs. Mira collected the empty cup and began checking Yara's visible injuries with practiced efficiency, her touch gentle but thorough. Bruised ribs, twisted ankle, various contusions and abrasions. Nothing that will not heal with time and rest. She directed her next words to Corbin. She needs at least a week of bed rest, my king. No strenuous activity. She will have whatever she needs. Corbin's tone brooked no argument. Mira smiled knowingly and gathered her supplies. I will return in the morning to check on her progress. She paused at the tent entrance. Sleep well, both of you. When they were alone again, Corbin rose from the bed and moved toward a chair near the fire, as though to give Yara space. Panic fluttered in her chest. Where are you going? He turned back, surprise flickering across his features. I thought you might prefer privacy, to rest without being watched. Yara bit her lip, shame warming her cheeks even as the words tumbled out. Please do not go far. She trailed off, uncertain how to explain that the thought of being alone in this unfamiliar place, even though she had been alone for so long, felt unbearable. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He returned to the bedside immediately, pulling the chair closer. I will be right here. You need only reach out, and I will be within touch. He settled into the chair, which seemed comically small beneath his frame, and watched her with an expression so gentle it made her chest ache. The medicine began to pull her under, warmth and drowsiness spreading through her limbs like honey. Corbin, she murmured. Half asleep already. Yes, little mate. Why do you call me that? Little mate? Even through her closing eyelids, she felt his smile. Because you fit perfectly in my arms, and because you are mine. Sleep now. I will keep watch. And surrounded by his presence, his scent, the steady rhythm of his breathing, Yara Sunvale slept without nightmares for the first time in years. Dawn broke soft and golden over the camp, filtering through the tent fabric in shades of amber and rose. Yara woke gradually, her body still aching but somehow lighter than before. The events of the previous night felt almost dreamlike. The fall, the rescue, the Alpha King's declaration. Mate. She opened her eyes to find Corbin exactly where he had been when she fell asleep, sitting in the chair beside her bed. But now his head was tilted back against the chair's high back, eyes closed, arms crossed over his broad chest. Asleep. For the first time, Yara allowed herself to truly look at him. Even in rest, he was formidable. His shoulders were impossibly wide, straining against the dark tunic he wore. His arms, crossed as they were, revealed the corded muscle beneath the fabric. Everything about him spoke of strength, of power held in check. He looked like he could break the world in half if he chose. But when he had held her last night, when he had wiped her tears, his touch had been butterfly soft. The duality confused her, frightened her, if she was honest. She had learned that powerful men were dangerous, that they took what they wanted and discarded what they did not. The village elder had been kind to her face while signing her death warrant behind closed doors. Yet Corbin had called her mate, had looked at her like she was something infinitely valuable. Why? As though sensing her gaze, his eyes opened. Amber locked onto silver, and awareness flooded his features immediately. You are awake. How do you feel? Sore, but better. She hesitated. Did you sleep at all? A slight smile tugged at his lips. Enough. My wolf does not require much rest when he is guarding what is precious. That word again. Precious. Applied to her, it felt like a lie, no matter how sincerely he spoke it. Corbin rose from the chair, stretching briefly, muscles rippling beneath his clothes. He moved to a small table where a pitcher of water and basin waited. May I? He gestured toward her. When she nodded, uncertain what he was asking, he dampened a cloth and returned to her side. With movements so careful they seemed at odds with his size, he began to clean the dried blood from her temple, from the scratches on her arms. You need not do this, Yara whispered. You are a king. Surely you have servants. I do. His focus remained on his task, the cloth moving with gentle precision. But you are my mate. Caring for you is my privilege, not a burden to delegate. The tenderness in his actions, in his words, was almost painful. Yara had no framework for this kind of attention. I do not understand you. The cloth paused. His eyes met hers. What do you not understand? You could have anyone. You are powerful. A king. I am, she struggled for words. I am damaged, unwanted. They threw me away like refuse. How can you look at me and see a mate? Corbin set the cloth aside and took her hand in both of his. His hands engulfed hers completely, warm and solid and real. Listen to me, Yara Sunvale. What they did to you, how they treated you, tells me nothing about your worth. It tells me everything about their blindness, their cruelty, their failure. He brought her hand to his chest, pressing her palm flat over his heart. She could feel it beating, strong and steady. Do you feel that? That is my heart, and it has been waiting for you. The moment I scented you in that valley, It recognized what my soul already knew. You are not damaged. You are not unwanted. You are mine, and I am yours. And that is a bond forged by something far greater than mortal judgment. She wanted to believe him, desperately. But years of rejection had built walls around her heart that would not crumble in a single night. I do not know how to be what you need. His expression softened impossibly further. You need only be yourself. The rest we will learn together. A knock sounded at the tent post, and Corbin's voice immediately shifted, taking on the harder edge of command. Enter. A man stepped inside, tall and lean with auburn hair tied back. He wore leather armor and carried himself with the confidence of a warrior. His eyes found Corbin first, respectful, then slid to Yara with open curiosity. My king. Forgive the intrusion. The men are asking for orders. Do we return north or... He paused meaningfully. Do we pay a visit to the village? Corbin's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his beard. The temperature in the tent seemed to drop several degrees. Prepare the horses. We visit the village. I have questions that require answers. The warrior grinned, a feral expression that reminded Yara these were not soft men. As you command. His eyes flicked to Yara again, this time with something like sympathy. My lady. He ducked back out, leaving them alone once more. Yara's heart hammered against her ribs. You are going back to the village. Corbin turned to her, and she saw both the man who had held her through tears and the king who commanded armies. I am. They attempted to murder my mate. That requires... His expression went cold. Conversation. Fear spiked through her. What will you do to them? His hand came up to cup her cheek. That depends on what they say. But you need not fear. I will not act without cause. However, he held her gaze. Justice will be served, little mate. I will not allow those who harmed you to go unpunished. She understood then that he meant it, that the Alpha King was offering her something she had never possessed. Protection, retribution, justice. Will you take me with you? The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. You are injured. I know. But they are my past. I need... She searched for the right words. I need to face them. Not as a victim. As someone who survived. Corbin studied her for a long moment, something like pride flickering in his amber eyes. Very well. But you will stay close to me. You will not overtax yourself. And if at any moment it becomes too much, you will tell me. I will. He nodded once, decisive. Then we prepare. But first, you eat. As if summoned, Mira appeared with another tray, this one laden with bread, cheese, fruit, and steaming broth. She fussed over Yara like a concerned mother, ensuring she ate every bite while checking her bandages and injuries. Corbin stood watch throughout, his presence a constant reassurance. An hour later, dressed in clean clothes someone had provided, a simple dress of soft gray wool that fit surprisingly well, Yara stood outside the tent for the first time. The camp stretched before her, a temporary settlement of perhaps 50 tents arranged in military precision. Warriors moved with purpose, tending horses, sharpening weapons, speaking in low tones. All activity stopped when they saw her. Yara felt the weight of dozens of eyes. An instinct screamed at her to make herself smaller, to disappear. Then Corbin emerged from the tent behind her, and his hand settled on the small of her back, warm and possessive. This is Yara Sunvale, my mate. His voice carried across the camp, commanding absolute attention. You will treat her with the respect due your queen. Any who fail in this will answer to me personally. Queen. The word rattled through her like thunder. Fists pressed to chests in salute. My lady. The response came from 50 throats as one. Corbin's hand pressed gently against her back, urging her forward. Come. The horses are ready. He led her through the camp to where several horses waited, saddled and prepared. The largest, a massive black stallion, tossed its head when Corbin approached, then settled as his master's hand touched its neck. "This is Shadow. He has carried me through battles and across half the territories." Corbin turned to her. "Can you ride? I learned as a child. But it has been years. You will ride with me. It will be easier on your injuries." Before she could respond, his hands circled her waist, and he lifted her onto Shadow's back as though she weighed nothing. The world tilted briefly, and she grabbed for the saddle horn. Corbin swung up behind her with fluid grace, settling into the saddle and pulling her back against his chest. His arms came around her to hold the reins, effectively caging her in warmth and protection. "Lean into me. I will not let you fall." The other warriors mounted, forming up around them in a protective formation. The auburn-haired man from earlier took point. The journey to the village took less than 2 hours, following trails that wound through dense forest and eventually emerged into cleared farmland. The fields were indeed failing, Yara noticed. Crops withered despite the late summer season, and the earth looked tired, depleted. Brown stalks stood where green should have flourished. The irrigation ditches ran shallow, poorly maintained. Even from a distance, she could see that the fields had been overworked, the same crops planted year after year without rotation, draining the soil of nutrients until it could give nothing back. But that was not her fault. No amount of blood would fix poor farming practices and depleted soil. No sacrifice would restore what ignorance and laziness had destroyed. The village elders had chosen superstition over knowledge, chosen an easy scapegoat over the hard work of learning better methods. And she had nearly died for their willful ignorance. The anger that flared in her chest was new. For so long, she had accepted the village's judgment of her, had believed that perhaps they were right, that perhaps she was cursed or wrong or somehow deserving of their contempt. But seeing the failed fields now, understanding the real reason for their troubles, she felt fury kindle like a small flame. They had been wrong. About everything. Corbin's arms tightened around her waist, and she realized he had sensed the change in her emotions through their bond. The connection between them was still new, still strengthening, but already she could feel echoes of his feelings, his protectiveness washing over her like a warm tide. "They deserve your anger," he murmured against her ear, his voice for her alone. "They deserve far more than anger. But you, little mate, you deserve to feel every emotion they denied you. Rage, grief, joy. All of it is yours to claim." His words unlocked something inside her. Permission. Permission to feel. To be angry. To demand better than what she had been given. As they crested the final hill, the village came into view. Small, perhaps 200 inhabitants, with a central square dominated by a large hall where the council met. Yara had spent her entire life within those boundaries, and yet looking at it now, riding in the protective circle of the Alpha King's arms, it seemed foreign, small. Corbin felt the tension enter her body. His arms tightened fractionally. "Steady, little mate. You are not alone." The arrival of 50 mounted warriors did not go unnoticed. By the time they reached the village square, people had emerged from homes and shops, clustering together with wide eyes and frightened whispers. Corbin dismounted first, then reached up for Yara, lifting her down with the same careful gentleness he had shown since finding her. But when he turned to face the crowd, his expression could have been carved from ice. "I am Corbin Wolfsong, Alpha King of the Northern Territories." His voice carried across the square, deep and authoritative. "I have come seeking answers. Last night, a woman was thrown into Spirit Valley as a sacrifice." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "That woman is my mate." Shocked silence rippled through the crowd. Faces she recognized, people who had watched her suffer in indifference, now looked between her and the imposing Alpha King with growing horror. Yara. That was Yara Sunvale, an old woman's voice shaking. But she was, we thought, the crops. Corbin's gaze locked onto the speaker, like a predator sighting prey. "You thought to appease the land with innocent blood?" He took a step forward, and several people stumbled backward. "You thought to murder a young woman based on superstition and convenience?" The crowd parted, and the village elder emerged, a portly man with gray hair and fine clothes that marked his status. His face had gone pale, but he drew himself up with false authority. "We followed the old ways, Alpha King. The land demanded nothing." Corbin's voice cracked like a whip. "You sacrificed an Omega because she had no one to defend her, because it was easier than examining your own failures as leaders and stewards." "Now wait just a moment," the elder blustered. Corbin closed the distance between them in 3 strides. He did not touch the man, but his presence alone made the elder shrink back. "You will be silent. I am speaking." Around them, the warriors had dismounted, forming a loose perimeter. Their hands rested on weapon hilts. A clear message. Corbin turned to address the crowd once more. "Yara Sunvale is under my protection. She is my mate, and by the laws of our kind, that makes any harm against her an act of war against my crown." His eyes swept across the assembled villagers, many of whom looked ready to faint. "You are fortunate that she yet lives. Had I found her dead, I would have burned this village to ash and salted the earth." Yara felt something inside her settle. Not satisfaction exactly, but a kind of peace. To hear someone speak on her behalf, to defend her worth, to demand accountability for what had been done to her. It mattered. The elder found his voice again, though it trembled. "We did not know, Alpha King. Had we known she was your mate? And that is the problem." Corbin's words cut through the excuse like a blade. Her value as a person should not depend on her connection to me. She deserved protection and care regardless. Your failure is not ignorance of her bond. Your failure is your cruelty. He turned then, his gaze finding Yara where she stood beside Shadow. In 3 strides he was back at her side, his hand finding hers. "Is there anything you wish to say to them?" Yara looked at the faces she had known her entire life. Neighbors who had ignored her, merchants who had shortchanged her, children who had thrown stones while their parents looked away, and the elder, who had smiled kindly while condemning her to death. For so long, she had wanted them to see her, to acknowledge that she mattered. Now, standing in the shadow of a man who had claimed her without hesitation, who had ridden through the night to save her, who looked at her like she held the sun and moon in her eyes, she realized something profound. She no longer needed their approval. "I forgive you." Her voice rang clear in the silent square. "Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your hatred as my burden any longer. You threw me away, but I survived. And I will thrive. While you remain here, small and afraid, trapped by your own ignorance." She turned her back on them, on the village, on the life that had tried to break her. "Take me home, Corbin." His hand squeezed hers, and when she looked up at him, his expression held something fierce and proud and infinitely tender. "Always, little mate." He lifted her back onto Shadow, mounted behind her, and without another word to the stunned villagers, the company turned and rode away. The village shrank behind them, and with every step that carried them farther, Yara felt lighter. Corbin's arms around her waist tightened gently. "You did well. I feel..." She paused, searching for the right word. "Free. Good." His breath warmed her ear. "That is how you should always feel." They rode in comfortable silence for several miles before Yara spoke again. "Where are we going?" "You said home, but I do not know where that is." "North, to my castle at the edge of the Frostvale Mountains. It is cold there, but beautiful. Stone halls that have stood for centuries, forests full of game, and a pack that will welcome you as their Luna. Luna, Queen of Wolves." The title felt impossible. "I do not know how to be a Luna." His arms tightened around her, and she felt his chuckle rumble through his chest into her back. "Neither did I know how to be a king when I inherited the title at 20. We will learn together, little mate. You need only be yourself. The rest will follow." Over the following days of travel, Yara began to understand the truth of his words. The warriors treated her with a respect she had never experienced. But more than that, they showed her kindness. They shared stories around evening campfires, taught her card games she had never learned, and spoke to her like an equal. And Corbin remained a constant presence at her side. As her injuries healed, he continued to tend to them himself, changing bandages with gentle precision, ensuring she ate properly, making certain she never had cause to feel alone or forgotten. But it was in the small moments that Yara truly began to see him, like the night she woke from a nightmare, gasping and disoriented, and he was there immediately, pulling her into his arms and murmuring soothing nonsense until her heart slowed. Or the afternoon she mentioned missing the wildflowers that grew near the village, and he disappeared for an hour, returning with an armful of similar blooms he had found in the forest. Or the evening she confessed she could not remember the last time someone had brushed her hair, and he sat behind her by the fire, working through the tangles with infinite patience while telling her stories of his childhood. He was teaching her, she realized, what it meant to be cared for. And slowly, carefully, her walls began to crumble. On the 5th night, they camped beside a river, its water running silver beneath the moon. Yara sat on a flat rock near the bank, trailing her fingers through the current, while the camp settled for the evening behind her. Corbin appeared at her side, silent as shadow, and sat beside her. For a while, they simply existed in companionable quiet, listening to the water's song. "May I ask you something?" Yara broke the silence softly. "Anything. Why were you in those woods that night? Spirit Valley is far from the Northern Territories." He was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "I had been traveling between territories, meeting with other alphas to discuss trade agreements and boundary disputes. Tedious but necessary work. We were taking the southern route home when..." He paused. "When I caught your scent on the wind. The fear in it. The resignation. My wolf reacted before my mind could question why. I ran, little mate. I left my company behind and ran because something in me knew that if I did not reach you in time, I would lose something irreplaceable." Yara turned to look at him, finding his amber eyes already fixed on her. "You did not even know me. My soul knew you." That was enough. She held his gaze, seeing the truth written there. No deception, no hidden agenda, just absolute certainty. "I was so afraid." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "When they dragged me to the valley, I was so afraid. I did not want to die alone and unmourned." His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "But you did not die. You survived. And you will never be alone again." The promise in those words wrapped around her heart like a vow. "Corbin, She stopped, uncertain. "What is it?" "I feel the pull too, the bond. It frightens me." "Why?" "Because I am afraid to trust it, to trust you. Not because of anything you have done, but because..." She struggled to articulate the tangle of fear and hope in her chest. "Because if I let myself believe this is real, and it is not, I will not survive it." His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Then, let me prove it to you. Day by day, moment by moment. Let me show you that this is real, that I am not going anywhere, that you are my mate, my queen, my heart-given form." He leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "Take all the time you need, Yara. I will wait. I will court you properly, as you deserve. And when you are ready to fully accept this bond, I will be here, exactly as I am now. Devoted. Yours." Tears pricked at her eyes. But this time they were not born of pain. Without thinking, guided by instinct and something deeper, she closed the small distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The world ignited. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question rather than a demand. But the moment their lips met, something electric surged through the bond between them. Corbin made a sound low in his throat, part growl, part groan, and his hand slid into her hair, careful not to pull, anchoring her to him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had gone molten gold. Yara. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. Is it always like that? Her voice shook. A slow smile curved his lips, transforming his fierce face into something almost boyish. That was the bond recognizing itself. And yes, little mate, it will only grow stronger. Heat flooded her cheeks, and Corbin laughed, the sound rich and warm and completely unguarded. Do not be embarrassed. It is a gift, our gift. He stood, offering his hand. Come, you should rest. We have several more days of travel. She let him pull her up, and they walked back to camp hand in hand. The warriors who saw them smiled knowingly, but said nothing. That night, Yara slept in Corbin's tent, in his arms, and for the first time since her mother's death, she felt truly at home. The castle at Frostvale was everything Corbin had promised and more. Built of pale stone that seemed to glow in the mountain light, it rose from the landscape like a natural extension of the peaks themselves. Towers reached toward the sky, banners snapping in the wind. And surrounding it, a forest of ancient pines that whispered secrets to those who would listen. As they rode through the gates, wolves howled their welcome. Actual wolves, wild ones that lived in harmony with the pack, their voices rising in a chorus that made Yara's own wolf stir with answering joy. People lined the courtyard, pack members of all ranks gathering to catch a glimpse of their returning alpha king. When they saw Yara seated before him, whispers rippled through the crowd. Corbin dismounted and lifted Yara down, then turned to address his people, his hand firmly clasped in hers. My pack, my family, I present to you, Yara Sunvale, my mate, your Luna. The response was immediate. Cheers erupted. People pressed forward, not threateningly but joyfully, offering congratulations and welcome. Yara felt overwhelmed by the sheer force of acceptance, but Corbin's steady presence at her side kept her grounded. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, moving with the authority of someone accustomed to deference. She had steel-gray hair piled atop her head and sharp blue eyes that assessed Yara thoroughly. So you are the one who finally caught our king's heart. Her voice was stern, but her eyes twinkled. About time. The man has been insufferable in his loneliness. Corbin actually looked embarrassed. Helena. Do not Helena me, boy. I changed your nappies. I can speak truth. The old woman turned her full attention to Yara. I am Helena, keeper of this castle and, unofficially, keeper of this fool's common sense. Welcome, child. You look half-starved. Come, let us get food in you while the men deal with... She waved dismissively at the milling warriors. Whatever it is men deal with. Before Yara could respond, Corbin leaned down and pressed a kiss to her temple. Go with Helena. She will take good care of you. I must see to some matters, but I will find you within the hour. Yara wanted to protest, to cling to the one familiar thing in this new place, but something in Helena's knowing gaze steadied her. All right. Helena linked her arm through Yara's and began steering her toward the castle proper. The castle is large and can be confusing at first, but you will learn the ways quickly enough. Your chambers are in the king's tower, of course, connected to his, as is proper for mates. They entered through massive doors into a great hall that stole Yara's breath. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by carved beams that depicted running wolves and forest scenes. Tapestries lined the walls, rich with color and history. Fires burned in 3 separate hearths, casting dancing light across the stone floors. It is beautiful, Yara breathed. It is home. Helena smiled. And now it is yours as well. She led Yara through corridors and up winding stairs, pointing out important rooms and introducing her to various pack members they encountered. Everyone seemed genuinely happy about her presence, offering warm smiles and respectful nods. Finally, Helena opened a door into a suite of rooms that made Yara's eyes widen. A large sitting room gave way to a bedchamber dominated by an enormous bed piled with furs and blankets. Windows overlooked the mountains, offering views that seemed to stretch forever. And through another door, she glimpsed a bathing room with a tub large enough for 3 people. This is... Yara struggled for words. Too much. Helena laughed. This is exactly enough for Eluna. Now sit. I will have food brought up, and we will get you properly bathed and dressed. The king will want to introduce you formally at tonight's feast. Feast. It is tradition when Eluna is claimed. The whole pack celebrates. Helena's expression softened. Do not fear, child. They will love you. How could they not? Over the next hours, Yara was subjected to more care and attention than she had received in her entire life. A hot bath in scented water, clean clothes and fabric softer than anything she had ever worn. Helena braiding her white hair into an intricate pattern that somehow made her look regal instead of washed out. When Corbin finally returned, knocking softly before entering, he stopped in his tracks. Yara turned from the window where she had been watching the sun set over the mountains, and his expression made her blush. You are. He crossed to her in 3 strides, taking her hands in his. Breathtaking. She wore a gown of deep blue, simple in design but exquisite in fit. Her hair fell in white waves over one shoulder, held back from her face by the braids Helena had woven. It is too much, she said, echoing her earlier words. I am not. You are everything. He kissed her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. And tonight, I want you by my side as I formally present you to the pack. Will you stand with me, little mate? The endearment, which had felt strange at first, now settled over her like a warm blanket. Safe. Cherished. Hers. I will. The feast was held in the great hall, which had been transformed for the occasion. Long tables groaned under the weight of food. Musicians played in one corner, and what seemed like hundreds of people filled the space with laughter and conversation. Corbin led her to a raised table at the hall's head, and when he raised his hand for silence, the room quieted immediately. My pack. His voice carried to every corner. Tonight we celebrate not just my return, but the blessing the moon goddess has granted us. He turned to Yara, and the tenderness in his expression made several women in the crowd sigh audibly. Yara Sunvale is my true mate, the one my soul has been seeking, and she has agreed to stand beside me as your Luna. He extended his hand to her, and Yara stood, her heart hammering, but her hand steady as she took his. I know this is sudden. Corbin addressed the room, but his eyes remained on her. I know you have questions and concerns, but I ask that you welcome her, as you would welcome me. She has known hardship and cruelty. Let us show her that this pack, our pack, is different. That here, she will find only acceptance and love. The cheer that erupted shook the rafters. Fists pounded tables in approval. And when Corbin pulled Yara close and kissed her before the entire assembly, the roar of approval nearly deafened her. When they finally broke apart, Yara was laughing, joy bubbling up from some deep place she had thought long dead. The feast lasted late into the night. Yara was introduced to countless pack members, each offering congratulations and welcome. She met the beta, a serious man named Theron, who watched over the pack's security. She met the families with children, who shyly offered her drawings and flowers. She met the elders, who assessed her with ancient eyes and apparently found her acceptable. But through it all, Corbin remained at her side, his hand at her back, his presence a constant reassurance. When she grew overwhelmed, he seemed to sense it, steering her toward quieter conversations, or simply standing as a buffer between her and the crowd. Late in the evening, when the children had been put to bed, and the crowd had thinned to those hardy souls who could drink and dance till dawn, Corbin leaned close to her ear. Shall we retire? You must be exhausted. Grateful, she nodded. He stood, and though he said nothing, his beta noticed and began making their excuses. Within minutes, they had slipped away from the great hall, leaving the celebration to continue without them. The castle corridors were quiet, lit by torches that cast flickering shadows on stone walls. Their footsteps echoed softly as Corbin led her back toward their chambers. At the door, he paused. I have something for you." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. Yara took it with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside was a ring. Not a delicate thing, but substantial, crafted from silver and set with a stone that seemed to capture starlight. When she looked closer, she saw tiny wolves chasing each other around the band. It was my mother's. Corbin's voice was soft. She died when I was young, but I remember her strength, her kindness. She would have loved you, I think. Tears pricked at Yara's eyes. It is beautiful. But I cannot. This is mine to give, and yours to accept. He took the ring and slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. You are my mate, Yara. This is my promise in symbol and word. I will protect you, cherish you, stand beside you through whatever comes. You are no longer alone. She looked up at him. This powerful Alpha King who had saved her, claimed her, shown her what it meant to be valued, and felt the last walls around her heart crumble. I love you. The words emerged as barely a whisper, but his reaction was immediate. Corbin swept her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that stole her breath. When he finally pulled back, his eyes blazed. Say it again. I love you, Corbin Wolfsong. I love you. And I am terrified by how much I love you. And I do not care because you have shown me that I am allowed to love and be loved in return. His forehead pressed to hers. I love you, Yara Sunvale. My mate, my queen, my heart. I have loved you since I found you in that valley, and I will love you until the stars burn out and the earth grows cold. The kiss that followed was different from the others. Deeper, more certain, a claiming and a surrender all at once. When they finally broke apart, Corbin lifted her into his arms, carrying her across the threshold into their chambers and kicking the door shut behind them. Tomorrow would bring the challenges of ruling together, of navigating pack politics, of helping Yara find her place as Luna. But tonight, they had only each other, and the bond that burned between them brighter than any fire. In the weeks that followed, Yara slowly found her footing in her new life. Corbin was patient, never pushing her beyond what she was ready for, but always offering his support. He taught her about pack hierarchy, about the responsibilities of a Luna, about the political landscape of the territories. He showed her maps spread across the great table in his study, explained the delicate balance of alliances and rivalries that kept peace across the regions. He introduced her to the complex web of trade agreements, border disputes, and ancient treaties that governed interactions between packs. But more than that, he taught her about herself. He showed her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. That the quiet strength she had developed through years of survival could be transformed into leadership. That her empathy, born from suffering, made her uniquely qualified to understand the struggles of others. Like the day she sat in on a pack council meeting and hesitantly offered a suggestion about the failing southern border patrols. The council members had looked skeptical until Corbin leaned forward with interest, asking her to elaborate. Her idea, a rotation system that would keep wolves fresher and more alert, was implemented the following week and proved immediately successful. The number of border incidents dropped by half within the first month, and the warriors reported feeling less fatigued, more focused. That night, Corbin had kissed her breathless and told her she was brilliant. But more than his praise, it was the respect she saw in the eyes of the council members at the next meeting that told her she had earned her place. They listened when she spoke now. They considered her words seriously. She was not just the Alpha King's mate. She was becoming their Luna in truth. Or the afternoon she found a young Omega girl crying in the castle gardens, rejected by her family for being too weak. The girl, no more than 16, had been huddled beneath a flowering bush, her thin shoulders shaking with sobs. Yara had approached slowly, careful not to startle her, and simply sat beside her in the grass. For a long time, they did not speak. Yara simply offered her presence, her understanding. When the girl finally looked up with red-rimmed eyes, Yara saw her own past reflected back at her. She shared her own story then, speaking quietly about the village, about the loneliness, about being thrown away, about finding worth not in others' opinions but in her own survival, her own choices. By the end of the conversation, the girl was smiling, hope rekindling in her eyes. Yara offered her a place in the castle, a position helping in the kitchens if she wanted it, or training with the healers if that called to her. The choice, Yara emphasized, was hers to make. Word spread, and soon other Omegas began seeking Yara out, finding in her a Luna who understood their struggles. She held informal gatherings in the gardens, creating a space where Omegas could speak freely, share their challenges, support one another. She advocated for them in council meetings, pushing for changes that would ensure no Omega in their pack felt discarded or worthless. Corbin watched with pride as she built her own network of support and influence, separate from but complementary to his own. He saw her grow more confident with each passing day, her voice growing stronger in council meetings, her suggestions more bold. She was becoming the Luna their pack needed, the Luna she was always meant to be. But it was not all smooth. There were those who questioned her worthiness, who whispered that she was too broken, too weak to be a proper Luna. Corbin dealt with such dissent swiftly and without mercy. After he made an example of a particularly vocal detractor, hauling the man before the entire pack and stripping him of rank for disrespecting their Luna, the whispers stopped. "You did not have to do that," Yara told him later, though secretly she was grateful. "I did." His voice was iron. "You are my mate, and you are their Luna. Anyone who cannot show you respect has no place in this pack." The duality of him never ceased to amaze her. To the world he was fierce, uncompromising, a king whose word was law. But with her, in private moments, he was tender, patient, devoted beyond measure. Like the nights he held her through nightmares, never complaining about lost sleep, or the mornings he brought her tea just how she liked it, having learned her preferences through careful observation. Or the afternoons he would find her in the library, curl up beside her, and simply read in companionable silence. He showed her daily what it meant to be loved without condition. And as summer faded into autumn, Yara felt herself transforming. The frightened, broken woman thrown into Spirit Valley was gone. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone who had learned that her worth was not determined by others' cruelty, but by her own choices, her own courage. One evening, standing on the balcony outside their chambers and watching the first snow begin to fall over the mountains, Yara felt Corbin's arms wrap around her from behind. "What are you thinking, little mate?" She leaned back into his warmth. "That I am happy, truly, deeply happy. And I never thought I would be able to say that." His arms tightened. "You deserve every happiness." She turned in his embrace, looking up into those amber eyes that had become her home. "I am also thinking," she said slowly, "that I am ready." "Ready for what?" "To complete the bond. Fully." She held his gaze. "I love you, Corbin, and I trust you. I want to be yours in every way. No more fear, no more holding back." Something blazed in his eyes, bright and fierce and tender all at once. "Are you certain?" "There is no rush, Yara. I would wait forever if you needed me to." "I am certain." She smiled. "You have proven yourself to me 1,000 times over. You have shown me what love looks like, what partnership means. I choose you, Corbin Wolfsong. Today and always." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and swept her into his arms, carrying her back inside as the snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in white. That night, beneath the furs on their bed, with moonlight streaming through the windows and the bond between them singing with recognition, Yara and Corbin completed their mating. It was tender and passionate, a physical manifestation of the emotional connection they had built over months. When the bite came, when Corbin's teeth sank gently into the junction of her neck and shoulder, marking her as his for all eternity, Yara felt the bond snap into place with a finality that was more beautiful than frightening. And when she returned the mark, her own bite claiming him as surely as his claimed her, she felt his love crash over her like a wave. Mine, he breathed against her skin. Yours, she agreed. Always yours. They held each other as the bond settled, as two souls that had been searching finally found their home in each other. Outside, wolves howled, their voices rising in celebration. The pack felt the bond's completion, the solidifying of their Luna's place among them. And in the castle at Frostvale, wrapped in the arms of the man who had saved her, who had shown her that she deserved love, who had transformed her from victim to queen, Yara Sunvale finally understood that she had not been thrown away in that valley. She had been set free. Free to find her true self. Free to find her mate. Free to claim the life she deserved. The months that followed were filled with challenges. Rival packs tested Corbin's borders, seeking to exploit what they perceived as weakness, their king distracted by his new mate. But what they found instead was a unified front. Corbin, fierce and strategic in battle, his Luna standing beside him not as a liability, but as a strength. The first real test came from the Eastern Pack, whose alpha, a brutal man named Gregor, had long coveted portions of the Northern Territory. He sent raiding parties across the border, testing their defenses, stealing livestock, harassing outlying settlements. When Corbin called for a meeting to address the incursions, Gregor arrived with a sneer and an assumption that the new Luna would be a soft target, a weakness he could exploit. He was wrong. Yara sat beside Corbin during the negotiations, silent at first, observing. She watched Gregor's tactics, the way he tried to bait Corbin into losing his temper, the way he dismissed her presence entirely. And she saw something Corbin, in his righteous anger, had missed. Gregor's second-in-command kept glancing toward the door, nervous, uncomfortable. There was dissent in his ranks. She leaned close to Corbin, whispering her observation. His eyes flickered with understanding, and he adjusted his strategy on the spot. Instead of threatening Gregor directly, he addressed the second-in-command, asking pointed questions about the welfare of the Eastern Pack's people, whether they supported their alpha's aggression, whether they understood the cost of prolonged conflict. The man's discomfort grew. Other warriors in Gregor's party shifted uneasily. By the end of the meeting, Gregor had been forced to back down, his own pack's loyalty too uncertain to risk pushing further. After they left, Corbin pulled Yara into his arms, kissing her deeply. "You see things I miss," he told her. "We are stronger together." Yara discovered she had a talent for diplomacy, for reading people and situations. Where Corbin's approach was direct and forceful, hers was subtle and intuitive. Together they were formidable. He was the sword, she was the shield. He was the storm, she was the calm at its center. They balanced each other in ways that made the pack stronger, made their territory more secure. There were pack disputes to settle, alliances to forge, and the ever-present work of governance. But through it all, Corbin and Yara faced everything together. She learned to use her voice in council meetings, her opinions valued and respected. She established programs to support the Omegas in their pack, ensuring no one felt as discarded as she once had. She trained with the warriors, discovering a strength she had not known she possessed. And Corbin supported every step, proud when she succeeded, comforting when she stumbled, constant in his devotion. Spring came, bringing with it new life to the forests and mountains, and bringing with it news that made Yara's hands shake as she stared at Mira, the healer. "You are certain?" Mira smiled, her eyes kind. "Absolutely certain, my Luna. You carry the Alpha King's child." Yara pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, wonder and fear warring in her chest. A child. She was going to have a child. She found Corbin in the training yard, sparring with Theron. The moment he saw her face, he stopped mid-swing, tossing his practice sword aside and closing the distance between them in seconds. "What is wrong?" She looked up at him, this magnificent man who had claimed her, saved her, loved her, and felt tears stream down her cheeks. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is perfect." She took his hand and placed it over her stomach. "We are having a baby, Corbin." For a moment, he simply stared, Then his face transformed, joy breaking across his features like sunrise. He let out a whoop that startled the other warriors, swept her into his arms, and spun her around while she laughed. When he set her down, his hands framed her face with infinite gentleness. A child. Our child. Yes. He dropped to his knees before her, pressing his forehead against her stomach, his large hands spanning her waist. Thank you. The words were muffled but fervent. Thank you for this gift. For yourself. For our family. Yara threaded her fingers through his dark hair, her heart so full she thought it might burst. You gave me everything, Corbin. A home. Love. Purpose. This child is as much your gift to me. He looked up at her, amber eyes bright with unshed tears. I love you, Yara Sunvale, today, tomorrow, and all the days after. And I love you, Corbin Wolfsong, my mate, my king, my heart. Around them, the warriors had realized what was happening, and cheers erupted. The pack would celebrate tonight, Yara knew. Another reason for joy, for feasting, for the kind of community she had once thought existed only in stories. As Corbin rose and pulled her close, as she rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady rhythm of his heart, Yara thought back to that night in Spirit Valley, to the girl who had been thrown away, left to die alone. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had been broken and rebuilt herself stronger, who had found love in the most unexpected place, who had learned that her worth was innate, not assigned by others. They had thrown her from Spirit Valley as an offering for the crops, but the Alpha King had intervened, and in doing so, he had not just saved her life, he had given her back herself. The sun set over the Frostvale Mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Inside the castle, preparations for another celebration were already beginning, and in the training yard, an Alpha King held his Luna close, two souls intertwined, two hearts beating as one. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility. There would be challenges still to face, battles to fight, struggles to overcome, but they would face them together. Mate to mate, heart to heart, king and queen of a pack that thrived under their combined strength. And in the quiet moments, when the world settled, and it was just the two of them, Corbin would pull Yara close and whisper against her hair, "You are mine, little mate." And she would smile, pressing closer, and respond, "And you are mine." Because she had learned the most important truth of all. Love was not about being saved. It was about being seen, being valued, being chosen every single day. And in Corbin's arms, Yara was all of those things and more. She was home. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.